Hello everyone. In this video I will discuss about the IoC containers. Now what are the containers? As you have designed the application of the servlet runs using the resources of the container. All the input output services are provided to the servlet by the container, and that container is provided by the Tomcat server. But as we have discussed in the earlier tutorial that the Spring is a lightweight framework. It means it does not it is not dependent on any of the application server or the web server to run its project. Therefore the Spring provides its own container. It is not dependent on the container which is provided by your web server or application server. In the Spring there are two types of container which you can use. The first is the bean factory container and the another is application context container. Basically these containers are defined in the form of interfaces in the Spring API. Bean factory is an interface and the application context is an interface which is there in the Spring API. So you can use either of these containers. Now what are the facilities which are provided by the container? Now as you know about the servlet container, in a project let there be 10 servlets, so that 10 servlets will run within the container using the resources of the container, but you have to tell the container or you have to provide the container the information about those 10 servlets, and that information is provided with the form of the XML file. In that case the XML file is known as web.xml. You have to specify the servlet name and the servlet class in the XML file. So when container reads that XML file, it loads all the servlets which are specified there in the XML file and also manages the life cycle of the servlets which are specified in the XML file. So here also the role of the container is to instantiate all the model classes, which here we will specify as our model classes, and also configure and assemble the object of those classes. Configure means to initialize all those objects within the container, and if there are any dependencies within the objects, and it also manages the dependencies within the object. So it will instantiate or create the instance of the application classes which we have specified. It manages the life cycle, it wire the dependencies. So here in our application classes are known as POJO classes. POJO means plain old Java object, because as we have mentioned earlier, the Spring classes or the Spring application classes are also lightweight classes because they do not extend with any API specific classes. Like in the case of the servlet, if you are designing a servlet, then your servlet should always extend with either HTTP servlet or generic servlet, and those HTTP and generic servlet are defined within the servlet API. But here where the application class or model class which you are going to design will not extend any of the Spring specific API. As you have designed the application in struts, so our action classes in the struts should always extend with the action support class which is provided with the struts API. But here our class will be simple POJO classes. It will not extend with any of the API specific classes. So in this tutorial we will first use the bean factory container, and with the help of a small program I will tell you how to create or initialize the container, or how to create the container within your Spring application, how to specify the configurations in the XML file and how to run your program. Now for this I will create one simple project, but in this I will use the Maven to build our project. I am using Maven because while designing the Spring framework, lot of the jar files are required, like spring core.jar, spring contest.jar, and spring test.jar. Now these jar files are bundled into a single jar file which can be downloaded as a zip file from the Spring website. But these jar files need some more jar files, means these jar files have a dependency on some other jar files like common logging.jar, which is a Tomcat jar file, because I am using Tomcat server to build this application. So you have to download that common logging.jar file separately and put within your class path. But Maven will take care of all these jar files, means if your jar file is dependent on any of the jar file, then Maven is having its own repository. From its repository it will download automatically all the depending jar files. For creating the application using Maven, your system should be connected to the network or to the internet. So here, first I will specify the default working location where to save my project. So you can specify either your C drive or D drive. Now these are the archetypes. You have to select any one of the archetype depending on your project or a type of the project you are building. If you are building some web app, then you have to use this archetype. This archetype is basically a sort of template, so that the Maven can download all the required repository if you are making web application or you are making your site. But we are here, I am going to demonstrate a simple the basics of the container, how the container is created in your Spring application. So I will select this simple archetype, that is the quick start archetype. Now in this archetype, in the group ID, you have to specify the package name where your all the Java classes and resources or the test cases will be saved. So I have specified the package name here. You can specify your own package name. In the artifact ID, I will specify the name of the project. What will be the name of our project? So I specify here as Maven first project. Then I will do finish. Now as you see, the Maven first project has been created. Now Maven, the second specialty or the second important use of the Maven is that it will also manage your directory structure. Like it has created these two directories for you, src main java, to place all your Java files, your applications, objects or your model objects. You have to place all within the jar file. All the test cases should be put in the this particular file or in this particular folder. Here, to place our resources, I will create one more folder, src, and this is also compulsory. You should also create this folder, that is the resources folder, and then Java. The name of the folder is src resources Java, like src main Java, src test Java, and this will be again the third source folder, src resource Java. Now I click finish. This folder is created here. Now I will refresh my project. When I refresh my project, under this src folder, these three folders are visible: main, resources and test. Main, resources and the test folder. Here I will place my Java file, here test cases, and here all the resources. In the resources I will place here the XML file which is required by the container to read all the model classes or the application classes which you want that they should be downloaded or they should be run, or whose life cycle will be managed by the container, or which you want to load within the container. Now in this, if we see in the GRE system library, there are all the JDK specific files, and in the Maven dependency there is one jar file which is by default provided by the Maven. There is one more important file, that is pom.xml file. If we open this file in the XML view, here in this pom.xml, pom means project object model. We have to provide all the dependencies matlab, here we provide the jar files, the name of the jar file in the form of dependencies. Now this dependency is automatically included by the Maven. With the help of this dependency, it has downloaded this particular jar file from its repository using the internet connection. Now I am having the list of all the dependencies, and I am pasting this all the dependencies within the POM file. Now when I save this file, all of these jar files are automatically downloaded by the Maven. So your machine should be connected to the internet. Some of the important files here which has been downloaded are spring core, spring beans, spring text, spring contest. These are some of the jar files, important jar files. These all dependencies I will give as a comment below this tutorial so that you can copy and paste the jar files under the pom.xml file. Okay, now what I am going to do is I will design one class here in this package, and I will again name this class as in the previous tutorial, like Airtel. Now this class will be having only one method, that is the service method. Now this is the service method within the class Airtel. This method will be used to activate the services of the Airtel, but here in this case it is simply printing one message that the Airtel services activated. Airtel services activated. Now we are all done with this class. As we can see, this Airtel is our class, or we can for a time being can assume that this is our model class, and this is also Pojo class, because this class is not inheriting any of the API classes or not implementing any API specific interface. So this class is an independent class. This is not dependent on any API specific class. So therefore this Airtel class is a Pojo class. Now we will create one configuration file in the form of the XML. Those configuration will be read by your container. Now this is the XML file. I name this file as a spring.xml. Now this is the file spring.xml. Now I save this file under this folder, src resources and java folder. Now this dependency file or this configuration file needs one doc type. Now that doc type is available within the bean jar file. So search for the beans, spring beans, and spring beans you have to search for this factory.xml. In this there is one DTT file is there, and scroll down. Now on line 36 and 37 there is one doc type. So paste this doc type into your configuration file, where I have got this configuration from the package spring beans. Go to the package beans.factory.xml. under that there is one DTT file. Okay, now in this configuration file the root tag is beans tag, so I specify one beans tag here. Now in beans tags, now what are these beans? All the model classes or application classes which you are creating here are known as beans. So there is one attribute of bean class. I name this attribute as Airtel, and the class which is to be loaded within the container. Now here you have to specify the fully qualified name of your class. Now I have saved my class Airtel in this package, so first I will copy this package name and then dot Airtel. This is the name of the class along with all of its packages, and this will be the ID. You have to provide necessity. This is a necessity to provide an ID to your class, because when the container is loaded, the container here in this case I am using the bean factory container. So when this container is loaded, it will instantiate this class, and Airtel will be a handler to that particular instance. Or if we want to access the instance, we will make use of this ID Airtel. So Airtel will be holding the instance of the class Airtel. Now in the main class within this project, I will create one container. Now which container I am using? I am using bean factory container for this application. Now this bean factory container needs one resource. The resources means the name of the file in which container from which the container will read the configurations, and we have provided that configuration in the file spring.xml. So this resources new class path resource, and here you have to specify the name of your configuration file, that is spring.xml. Now your container can read the resource And what is the resource? Spring.xml, which is in your class path. Now we have to import these two classes, that is the class path resource and the resources. And the resources, where is this resource? In this package. Now these both class has been imported. Now we will create our container, that is our bean factory. Now bean factory is a container, first point, and second point is that the bean factory is a interface which is there, which is provided Spring API. Now we cannot instantiate the interface in Java language, but there are some factory methods which returns the reference of that particular interface. Now here we are having one implementation class for this interface, that is XML bean factory. Now this is the implementation class of this interface, XML bean factory. Here we'll pass this resource as a parameter. So first I have to include this XML bean factory, the implementation class, and second the bean factory interface. Now this container bean factory is in the package org spring framework .bean.factory. Because if we are using any of the container and they are provided in the form of interfaces, then there should be some implementation class which is provided by a API. So here XML bean factory is an implementation class for your bean factory. Now this bean factory or your container is having one method, that is get bean method, in which you have to specify the name of the bean which you want to get loaded in this container. So here I specify this particular name, Airtel. Now this will return us the object of Airtel, but it will return the object of its superclass, that is the object class, so we have to typecast it. Now using this object we will call the method, that is the service method, which is there in the class Airtel, which we have designed here. Now we save all the classes, and when I run this program as a Java application, what I will got in the output, Airtel services activated. Now what we have done in this complete project, first I will create, first I have created one model class Airtel. It is a simple Pojo class, but because it do not extend with any of the existing API specific classes or not implementing any API specific interface. Secondly, I have designed one configuration file. To run the Spring application, these three things are necessary. First, your model class, second your configuration file. In this configuration file, I have saved this file in the resources folder, and I have included these doc type from the beans package. Then the root package of this configuration file is the bean tag, and in this bean tag I will specify the class, the model class, which need to be instantiated, and this ID attribute is mandatory because this Airtel will now act as a handler to this particular class. Now our second part is completed. Now our third important part is to create the container. Now in this I have created the container in the form of bean factory, but this bean factory container needs to read the XML file. For that I have created one resource, and in this resource I have specified the spring.xml file and passed this resource as a parameter. Now when this line get executed, the container will be created for running your Spring application. Now you have to specify by using the method getBean the bean which you want to get loaded into this container, bean factory container. Now this bean has been loaded into the bean factory container and is ready to use. Now I have called this method airtel.service on this bean, and we have seen the output that the Airtel services has been activated. We will see more about these containers in our next video. Okay, bye for now. Good day.